any questions through that form as well. That's also still available. In order to respect everyone's time, we're going to end at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So we've got 1 hour. If we have a lot of questions left at the end, which I'm sure we will, we'll try to schedule another session in the near future to continue going through everybody's questions. We're planning to record the session so that we can post it on YouTube for people to reference this, because there's a lot of very commonly asked questions that we're going to go over today. We want to make sure it's available for everyone going forward. Last little bit before we get started, please leave your microphone muted unless you're answering questions. And then if you notice any Zoom bombers in the video, let us know so that Yasha can boot them out, and then we'll try to lock the meeting if that becomes an issue, but hopefully we don't have to deal with any of that. So with that,
I'm going to start with a poll, and I think Cameron, you can start with the first question. I just want to get an idea of who all's here, and then we can start.
Right. So I'll bring up the first question while everyone's answering that poll there. So we had a lot of questions that come in about common topic of like step ones and, academic performance in medical school and how that affects your application. So things like, is there a step one cutoff? What do I do if my step scores are below average, or if I didn't do well at the beginning of medical school, will I still be able to match? And how can I have a competitive application when I go through the residency application process?
Nikki, do you want to answer this?
Hey guys, I'm Nikki. I'm one of the IR fellows from the IR pathway at the University of Virginia. I've served as an interviewer for 2 years, and there is no step one cutoff. Actually, I'm sure most of you have heard that step one is going to pass fail next year. Previously, places get so many applicants that they have to weed them out somehow. So saying that there's no step one cutoff is kind of not necessarily true. But if you've got a lot of great references, other things that have supported your application, you make it in with a lower step score for an interview. Once you get an interview, everybody's on an even playing field, and it just comes down to your letters of recommendation and how well you interview, and if they see that you fit at their program and vice versa, you want to know that you fit there as well, because we want you to be happy as a resident at that program.
Thank you. So far I haven't received any new questions, so we can just keep going from the Google Forms.
Sounds good. Another one that we got is, how many programs should someone plan on applying to when they are applying for a radiology residency?
Does anyone want to answer this? Otherwise, I can answer it. Go ahead, Cameron.
So this is a highly variable question. It's going to depend a lot on where you want to go, how you want to apply, and how competitive you think your application is. So I think the key is find someone that you trust who's going to give you honest feedback about where you fit in terms of competitiveness when it comes to applying. Get an honest assessment, and be critical of yourself to realize where you think you are competitive for. And then it's all about where you apply as well. If you're going to apply to every top tier program, you got to apply to all of them if that's where you're set on going and you think you're competitive enough. If you're not going to be competitive for the top tier programs, you want to apply to a broad set of programs and places where you think that you have a good shot at. So it's just a really variable answer, and there's not really a good number that anyone can give you for that.
Does anyone want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I will. I think a question I get a lot is how many places should you interview, like after you've applied and narrowed that down, which again, I think is really variable depending on the strength of your application and what kind of limitations you have. So if you have a geographic region or if you're couples matching, all those things will affect the number of places where you want to interview. But just for reference, I interviewed at 15 programs and I couples matched, and I felt like that was plenty. So I think that if that gives you like a number, there are some people you're going to meet across, you know, on the interview trail who interview at like way more places. Like people will do like almost all of them. And I don't know, it's a lot of time and money that they spend on that. And so I think like you only want to interview places where you think you would actually want to go.
Thank you. Okay, I just got a good question. If I dual apply to DR and IR, will the diagnostic radiology programs be less likely to rank me as high than if I was only applying diagnostic radiology? I feel like we hear this all the time. Does anyone want to jump in on that? We have a few IR folks here and DR.
Unless anyone else wants to, I can chime in. So with the new IRDR residency being separate from radiology residency, it's a little bit challenging. Your application is going to speak for yourself and saying whether or not you love IR or you love DR, whether your letters of recommendation, your research, your mentorship, whatever. At least in my experience, obviously it's a single institution. You will not have, if a program wants you to stay at their program, then they're going to rank you appropriately as such. Meaning that if we want a resident to stay at our program, but we've got 3 great IR pathway people that want to stay, but we only have 2 spots, we'll rank them so that they can match in diagnostic, and then they can become ESIR in an independent residency. Does that make sense? So if you really love a program, you should rank IR followed by DR, as opposed to doing all of your IRs followed by all of your DR programs. But if you really want to do IR only, then you should rank all of your IRs, then DRs. But if you love like a geographic region, a program, whatever, rank that program first. It's not going to negatively affect you. It ultimately comes down to whether or not you see yourself fitting at that program, whether or not they want you there. They'll rank you as such.
Jennifer, do you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I'll give the perspective from a different type of program. So I think Nikki's advice is really good, depending on your strategy for applying. Our program only has ESIR. It doesn't have IR independent or integrated. And we dealt with this question. I'm one of the interviewers, and we talked about this because we could kind of tell, you know, some people are interested in IR, and should we consider someone who's more interested in DR? And ultimately, we decided that a good applicant is a good applicant. So if your application is really strong, we really didn't care if we felt like you were probably also dual applying. And we just decided that there's a lot of fluidity in people's decisions, and someone who thinks that they want to do IR might end up doing DR, in which case we would just be really glad to have the best applicant that we could. And so we don't factor it into our decision-making process, and we don't, you know, ask people about it. We don't treat anybody differently depending on whether we think they want to do IR. But again, we aren't ranking people for an IR integrated spot. So it's going to vary a little bit depending on what the program offers.
Can you describe what ESIR is? We just had a question just before we keep going.
Yeah, ESIR is, you know, the best way to think about it is it used to be that people would do a 4-year radiology residency and they do a 1-year fellowship. And along the line, they said, hey, that's just not enough IR training. And people who were going to fellowship had really variable experiences depending on what they did in residency. And so the ESIR model is basically a way to get everyone 2 years of IR training, no matter how they go about it. So if you match directly into an integrated program, 2 years of your whole entire training will be IR, but you'll be in a single match. If you do ESIR, the final year of your diagnostic residency will be focused on IR, and then you'll do a 1-year independent residency, which is essentially synonymous with the fellowship, and that'll get you 2 years. If you don't have ESIR, you're in a non-ESIR path, you do your regular DR residency, and then you'd have to do a 2-year independent residency in IR. So that would get you 2 years of IR, but it would extend your training to a total of 7 years instead of a total of 6. And I guess the ESIR year is focused on IR, so you do a certain number of rotations in IR, a certain number of cases, IR related rotations, like we do ICU and vascular surgery. And that kind of, the breakdown of the ESI area will vary depending on where you are.
Thank you. Cameron, you want to do another one?
Yeah. So next one, I've got a few questions about research. So kind of group them into one. So first one is, if someone says they don't have a lot of research experience, will I be able to match into radiology without a lot of research experience? And then other ones, like I'm having trouble finding research opportunities at my institution, which doesn't have a home program. Does anybody have any tips for getting involved in research in that situation?
I have one. I'm Barbara Hamilton. I'm a private practice attending, and I did residency at Brown and fellowship at UCLA. So I just wanted to introduce myself as a friendly attending here. I was just lurking because my 2-year-old's here, but anyway, he's out of the room. So I would say for opportunities where you don't have some opportunities at your home institution, I would say that you could get plugged in with the SIR. There are lots of potential projects and opportunities that you could get plugged into through the RFS and their connection with the attendings. So whether it's an academic project or more of like a some other kind of project just within the society, it doesn't necessarily have to be, it might not be research per se, but there are various projects going on at all times.
I feel like I have to make a plug for social media too. Social media is a great way to get involved with research. I didn't mean to cut you off, sorry.
Really? No, please expound on that.
Oh no, I was saying on Twitter is a great place if you're ever looking to do something. It's a great place to announce you have lots of time, because a lot of people that are in academics are always looking for helpers over there. That's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, I haven't had any. Actually, yeah, I've had people reach out about paper opportunities to write something on Twitter, actually, come to think of it. It's a great way to connect with people via direct message that you normally wouldn't have access to so easily. So it's kind of an amazing time with the ability to direct message people. And I'm going to mute us now.
All right, that was so cute.
Add something about research. In general, a lot of your people who are going to be reviewing your applications, they truly don't have a lot of time to kind of look up your papers and see the quality of your research, whether it was a case report in a kind of smaller journal or, a prospective randomized trial in a really large journal. It's sort of just a way to, when you're doing research, to have something on your application to say that you're interested, that you've dedicated yourself to publishing, to kind of academic advancement. And so research isn't everything. It's also just one way to kind of set yourself apart, that you've done something other than just show up to work or show up to medical school. So research is great, but it's not everything. And it doesn't have to be a huge project that really is groundbreaking. It can really be simple research, including a case report, just to show that you're doing something.
That being said, if you have research on your application, be prepared to talk about it. Make sure you brush up on your research before your interview. You're going to be asked about it. You're going to be asked about your role in that research and kind of what the objectives are and what the next stages are for that research. So just make sure you're well versed in that project.
Dominique, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, well, I'm Dominique, I'm a 4th year at Mount Auburn, as well as at the same program Yasha is at. I just wanted to add that if you're at a medical school that has an affiliation with a children's hospital, that's kind of like a unique, like they're usually academic centers and they're in the position of like, they don't have their own residents. So that's kind of a resource that you could look into, because they have like academic attendings and maybe have the resources to do research, but they don't have their own residency programs. They may have fellows, but if you still have a few more years in medical school, that's an opportunity to work with someone for more than just like a year at a time, like their fellows generally do. So just a thought.
I can add something. I'm Rob Pang. I'm a fourth year at Monterey Medical Center. I remember in medical school, actually, at NYU, I did research within a handful of departments, but I also reached out to other academic institutions within, it's easy in New York City, but I actually did research at Columbia, and I did research at New York Stem Cell Foundation. So you can really reach out to other academic institutions and just introduce yourself. Also, a resource that I underutilized was just reach out to residents in departments, because a lot of times residents need help. And I think I didn't realize that when I was a medical student. And those are for sure great opportunities.
One quick other thing for people who don't have a residency program at your place, and you're looking for research, your research doesn't have to be in diagnostic or IR. As long as you're doing research and you're getting involved, it doesn't, when we see applicants, a lot of people don't even find out about IR until their third or fourth year. So you're not at fault if your research is in a different specialty.
I would expand, your opinion of what research is and what's useful too. So you can really use the societies to your benefit, whether that's ACR, SIR, or even some of the smaller subspecialties. They all have a resident section. They are and medical student, and a lot of them have positions available for medical student. And we weigh that type of involvement just as heavily as research, because it shows your dedication to radiology, ability to follow projects through, leadership, all the things that we're looking for in the context of research as well.
I would just like to plug something. Hi, this is Rakesh Ahuja. I'm the IR4 at Einstein Medical Center, and had a similar issue when I started radiology residency. We do not have any affiliation with any university programs as well. And as I think just Jen just said, it's exactly what she literally mentioned, like reach out to the society, especially the resident fellow sections. And just even personally myself, more than 40% of my research is just by collaborating with my other RFS members across the country. And besides that, it has given me such a great opportunity to network with them, to the point that you can quickly climb up the ladder and make great friends for the rest of your life just by doing research with people. So as a medical student, it's highly recommended you connect with your medical student societies from the sections from the respective societies. For example, we have SIR, MSc. They always collaborate with the residents, and we produce some good content, goes on the website. So feel free to reach out to anybody. Everybody's super helpful in our world.
Thank you. Cameron, do you want to ask the next question?
Definitely. So I had a couple questions coming from international medical grads. So any specific advice for IMGs? And then, yeah, so anybody have any specific advice for people that are applying from out of the country and trying to get into radiology in the US?
So I did my med school in India, and came here and did my research fellowship in surgical oncology, and tried my hand in surgery for a couple years, but eventually landed up in radiology, and now I'm on an IR pathway. And the way it worked out for me is, again, maybe it's just, again, the same thing, like it's networking and it's research and working with different people from different medical societies. And I get it, the research is really important, but as an IMG, it's really, really important to like make strong network connections. As we all know, it's not about who you know, it's all about who you know in the position that can make the decision. And this is exactly the kind of forum you want to be in, like make connections, just be the right person at the right time. But do not discount putting in hard work. Do not get shy away. Be that person that you're going to be reliable and dependent no matter what's asked of you, obviously keeping the safety precautions, but do whatever you can to advance for your career.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, next question. This is an important one. Any insight in how the application cycle will change because of COVID? And they cited this example that the OBGYN leadership has talked about pushing the application deadline back and limiting away rotations, which I know is happening for radiology too. Does anyone want to take this one? It's kind of a hard one. I don't think anyone knows the real answer.
So I can talk a little bit about it, I guess. So the independent residency interviews were not completed when COVID started, and there was a restriction on travel. So the remainder of those interviews happened via like Zoom and WebEx and stuff. I think a lot of that really kind of just depends on where we stand as a country at the time of interviews. But they may be in person or they may be via like, Zoom or whatever. Obviously, everyone would prefer to have them in person because you can't tour a department or meet everybody if it's on an online platform. But I think we need to be prepared that that's a realistic option.
Awesome, thank you. And I would like to just reiterate the importance that, like, if you don't have your away rotations, it's not the end of the world. You can still make connections and do things without having to be there in person. So don't be afraid of that. It's okay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I would say, hey, sorry, I'm Hala. I'm one of the third years at Masonic. Actually need to know, agree with me, but I know like for our program, an away rotation definitely helps you make connections. But even if you call into the program, say, hey, I would like to come in and just, tour your program, I wasn't able to get an away rotation. I'm sure people would appreciate, the effort that you're trying to put in.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. All right, can move on to the next question.
I just had a related question that kind of came in on the Google form. I think would be good to address now since we're on the topic. So if interviews end up not being in person, does anybody have any tips for how to get a real feel for the program and the resources that they have available?
I think, hey, my name is Krang. I'm at UMKC. I think something y'all can do is definitely reach out to anyone through social media or through the straight chapter to kind of get a good idea of what the program is, how it is, how the people are. So try to reach out to those individuals who go to that program. Definitely check out the website. Even contacting the program coordinator and the program director. I mean, getting a sense of how they are, that really gives you a big sense of how the program is also. So definitely, do all those things, and I'm sure you'll get a good feel of it.
Yeah, I think everybody, if that does happen, just reach out on Twitter. If someone has a Twitter account and they're from that program, undoubtedly they're open to engaging with you. So just reach out. If anyone has questions about Montefiore, just shoot me a text. It doesn't matter. And I'm sure anyone who's on social media here would agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of times those people also know about the surrounding program. So if you're confused or you don't know about a program that's also in Boston or also in New York, like Rob said, you can also ask. They often have good insight on that too. All right. I think that was a good answer. There were a lot of questions about prelims. So I think we could talk for a second about prelims. How do you rank them? Do you do medicine or surgery? And letters of recommendation. Do I need a specific letter? So does someone want to address the prelim year?
I can address it in terms of going into diagnostics. I don't really have much about IR. I did a medicine year. I know I also applied for transitional years. I would say medicine year actually really helped me. You do get I did not do a very difficult medicine year. It was between electives and medicine. Honestly, that did really help me, especially because you'll know once you get to radiology, especially on nights, the medicine team does tend to call you a lot and ask for help. And it is kind of nice sometimes when you know what, they want from you. So yeah, I would say medicine really helped. I've heard transitional year is really good too. I pretty much ranked on location. I wanted to not move between my first and my intern year and my radiology year. I wanted to kind of just stay in the same place, so that played a big role too for me.
Awesome. Cameron, do you want to talk about this a little?
I can talk about it from a different perspective. I'm also going into diagnostics, but I did a surgery prelim year. As I was getting ready to apply, I obviously applying to radiology, having to do the prelim interviews in addition to your radiology interviews kind of adds up. It can take a lot of time and a lot of expense. And one of the benefits of doing surgery for me was I only had to interview at like 3 programs, and I got my first choice of prelim. I just didn't have to worry about it because there are so many spots available. You just open to it if you want to. You really will be able to get one if you want. That said, I also wanted to do surgery. I didn't want to spend, I would have been miserable if I had to spend 8 hours a day rounding as an intern. So I wanted to do surgery, and I thought that was a great experience. I think it helped a lot being able to relate to the surgeons now. In diagnostic rotations, it really, it's been pretty valuable on call too.
Someone asked if you should, oh, sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
Sorry, thanks. I didn't introduce myself earlier. My name is Jesse. I'm R4 at Staten Island University Hospital in New York City. So I'm going into IR, and it probably goes without saying, but it's invaluable to do a surgical prelim year because so much of what you do in surgery kind of parlays into what you need to do for IR. So much of the clinical issues that you're dealing with, whether it's like a pulmonary embolism or just a mass that you're treating in the abdomen, whether you're actually treating it to cure it or to biopsy it, so much of the issues that we deal with are either surgical or potentially dealt with in interventional radiology. And so it's really great to see where the counterparts are coming from. It's great to have a surgical background and then kind of evolve into an interventional radiology background. And you are going to have so much more experience kind of with your hands on an ultrasound probe or with your hands on a needle of some sort, to where you're actually comfortable interacting with, like, putting a needle in tissue if you're actually doing a surgical prelim year. I really think it really set me up well for training in IR. I just can't understate the importance of surgical prelim year.
I also did a surgery prelim year, obviously for IR, but from a diagnostic standpoint, surgery is also very important in the sense that all of the, swallow studies that you're going to do, the post-op swallow studies, you've seen that anatomy in the OR, all of the post-surgical changes that you see on CT abdomen pelvis, all that stuff, you've already seen all of that. And so you kind of have a step up from the people that did medicine, just because you already know all of those surgical changes and what to expect on imaging because you've seen it throughout the year. I think, medicine would be fine for DR. For IR, I would highly recommend surgery.
And I think, I don't know who knows the answer to this, does the SIR, they're encouraging most applicants to do a surgical prelim, but I'm not sure if it's a requirement.
Encouraged, but not required.
Yeah, but a lot of program directors, they do like the surgical prelim year. I guess I slipped in before that was what they wanted. I did a internal medicine prelim year, and it's great. I guess someone asked about recommendations. I still had the head of my medical service write me a letter. Like, that was the only medicine letter I had in addition to like my diagnostic radiology letters. And being in New York, it was actually pretty competitive for the prelim programs because a lot of people want to be in New York City. So I remember interviewing at like 13, 14 programs. And some of those interviews were actually more difficult than than the diagnostic radiology ones. A lot of ethical questions were asked. And at least for New York City, you do have to apply to a lot because it is hard to get into. But as you guys probably know, prelim years are usually tougher than transitional years if that's like what you're looking for. The transitional years, it's for sure a lot more lax in the sense that you have more electives. And you're also spaced out with OBGYN and pediatrics. So it's definitely a more relaxed year. I had prelim year and it was Q2 call, but I loved it because it was a resident run program and you really learned how to practice medicine.
Someone asked about a hybrid program, if there was a medicine or surgery. I'll just say that transitional years usually get more elective time, but definitely look at the website of the intern years you're applying to, because some medicine years are more heavy than others. And so look at what, like, try to figure out what you're looking for, because some TYs are definitely more like medicine prelim years and vice versa. So just see how many electives you get, because then you can make yourself more of a hybrid year if you want, but you have to do the research yourself. All right, Cameron, I think we're on a Google Forms question now.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking on some of the questions we've had earlier, but some people have asked about, they've had to ask very specific questions kind of about their application, or asked, I'd like to find a resident as my mentor to help guide me through applications, interviews, match process. How can I go about finding someone to help me do that and prepare?
I think like what I did is I found somebody who wanted to go into the same field that I wanted to go into, and also the same region. So say I want, like I'm practicing now in Chicago. So I wanted to find somebody in Chicago that knows people, help with networking, things like that. I would say that that's probably, if you want to match somewhere, maybe find someone who's in that area can help you and also has the same interests as you. In terms of how to go about it, I would say nowadays with, the social media, like reaching out to somebody on Twitter, or if there's a specific program that you want to go into, maybe see if somebody in that program is on social media that you can reach out to them. I'm sure most people are open. I know I am. A lot of my co-residents are on there too, and they're also open.
I'll second that. I think that if you don't have any local options, you don't have someone that you know, I would just use Twitter. I think that if anyone's on Twitter, you should consider it an open invitation to send them a DM and tell them that you're looking for a mentor. And if they're not able or willing to do that for you, they're going to know someone who can. I'm doing IR, but if a med student, messaged me and said they were interested in breast, I'd be like, hey, that's not really my jam, but I know 5 people who could help you. And so I think that that's a really easy way to reach out and get different opinions from different parts of the country from where you are now.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to ask a new question, if that's okay, unless someone wanted to add something. Okay, so if you're interested in becoming more involved in academic radiology at a more regional or national level, where should we get started? Does anyone want to take this?
I can go. So I think a lot of us has already said Twitter multiple times, and I think that's a great way to get started. But another thing you can do is go to all the big national radiology organizations like ACR, RSNA, like SIR, all these different organizations. Go to their website, and there are applications that you can fill out to be part of, to volunteer your time to be part of committees, like the RFS committees. And that's a great way to start. And then once you do all that, keep up with everyone on Twitter. If there's anything that you see that you want to get interested in or whatnot, reach out to someone, and everyone over there is ready to help. So just let them know.
Yeah, in addition to doing all that, if you're ever at a meeting, go to all the resident events. You're more than welcome to join any of them, and people are really friendly.
On top of it, there's also so many scholarships that everyone is eligible to apply for. you know, it's not really something that was on my radar as a medical student, but so many of these societies that we've already mentioned have scholarships that you can apply for and are very welcoming to you know, medical students signing on and getting interested and being part of their workshops and training programs, even though you guys aren't even in radiology yet.
Awesome. All right, how are we doing, Cameron?
Good. We've still got a lot of questions. So we've had a couple people talking about some fellowship related questions, like specific research, stuff like that. So in the lines of talking about fellowship, when did you decide which fellowship you were going to do in radiology? And then another question of, do you need to do a fellowship to get a job as a radiologist?
I'll take this. So being a woman in IR, we're kind of in the minority. And so I probably declared a little bit later, but as soon as you're interested in something, even if it's more than one area of radiology, I think you should declare your interest to your attendings that can help you. So declaring your interest is kind of a double-edged sword because people will take you under their wing, but you know, they might get upset if you change your mind, but you just have to accept that and kind of declare yourself if you want to prepare yourself to get that attending support. And I think, you know, I'm 6 years out as an attending, and it's pretty important to have fellowship training these days. It's my sense just in the private practice world that, you know, just the general radiologist still exists, but everybody expects you to be marketable, to have your own subspecialty. So I would just have your sights set on fellowship. I mean, if you're not doing fellowship at this day and age, I think it's just seen as you either couldn't pick something or it might just be seen as laziness. Frankly, I'm not sure why someone wouldn't do a fellowship at this point. It's going to make you stronger in a particular area.
I think with regards to picking your specialty, most people towards the latter half of the second year and third year, that's when they truly know. And that's just because the first year of residency, it's so different from your prelim year. And so much of that is just spent acclimating to your program, getting used to all the imaging modalities, and just kind of, you know, staying afloat. And with radiology, the way my program did was the first year, it's kind of like you don't do the more advanced sort of cross-sectional imaging until your second year. So then I think it's hard to really make a decision on which specialty that you want until you've kind of gone through that sort of process. So I would say really start thinking about it end of second year.
And I would also say, like, don't be scared to switch. I mean, I went into radiology being hardcore IR, and I literally decided a few weeks before the quarantine that I wanted to do breast. And yes, I mean, some of my IR attendings were not that happy, but the breast attendings were really happy. So I don't think you should be scared. And also, because I was in IR, I had to do a breast rotation earlier so I could figure it out. So I asked for an additional rotation in February, and they were nice enough to give it to me. So don't be, you know, afraid to ask for that if it is an area that you think you might be interested in.
Yeah, you'll find that when it comes to actually applying for your fellowship, that each fellowship has a different timeline. Like MSK happens to be pretty early. IR is a little bit later. I don't know exactly what all of them are, but I think that MSK is like at the end of your second year that you have to decide. And then the rest of them are kind of somewhere within the third year. And then IR is a little bit after that. I'm pretty sure IR is one of the last ones. So you'll just have to ask your individual program, but you've got plenty of time in your rotations to figure out what you want to do.
I want to chime in something on this. It's pretty relevant to me. So if you decide to get into radiology for a certain kind of a fellowship, even from the beginning, just be rest assured that yes, you're going to make very strong connections with your respective section attendings, but be prepared to like put in extra effort and be always available when you are on other rotations, even though you may not like them. But believe it or not, this goes a long way, because someday down the line, and if you want to get a job and someone at that job may not be the same fellowship trained person, but they can reach out to somebody in your program, which might be a different specialty, like a subspecialty in your own specialty. And that helps a lot. And that has worked in my favor recently, getting called for the jobs already. But they found out by one of my other attendings who happens to be a body radiologist. And I mean, I like body, but I mean, IR is IR for me. So just be prepared to put in extra effort in other specialties, because this is the only time you would be probably doing this for the rest of your life.
That's a good point. And I think it's important to remember that it's always a really small world. So you never know who can help you, and you never know if the person you're working with also is unhappy with the way that the work you're doing, if you're feeling lazy or something that could hurt you too. So that goes for med school and for residency and forever. Radiology is a small world. Okay, this is a good question. How often are residents interacting across their local institutions, professionally and socially? I feel like we have a perfect example right here. All the time. Someone want to chime in on that one?
I know like in we have CS. Not sure if are active in that, but we do all meet once a month. We also have this ER symposium here in Chicago where all the first years get together. I think it's like somewhere around February or early March. And they have like a course, and that you're forced to go to as a first year. Those are probably two big interactions that we have here in the Chicago area.
Yeah, I was going to say that your interaction with programs around your city or state really depends highly on where you are. You might be in a place like New York City, which has something like 18 programs in its downstate area. So there's so much interaction, whether it's through your specialty interest groups having meetings in the city, like doing meetings or journal clubs. But it can also range to more spread out programs, something like Kentucky, where you have a program, just two programs, but they do manage to network with one another as well. So there can be a lot of interaction, and I think recently that's something that the HCR has tried to promote a lot, and it's something that has kind of been booming, especially with a lot of interest in Twitter and a lot of radiology advocacy. It's sort of a separate discussion, but there is a lot of that, and that's something that's great because you can compare, what your program is doing compared to another program in terms of your training or your hours or your workload. There's just so much more to gain from collaborating with programs around locally and from across the country.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I probably interact with some of these people in this Zoom call. Actually, I know I interact with some of these people in this Zoom call more so than some of my co-residents in my program. And that's just like you eventually find your group of people that you actually hang out with and collaborate with. That said, I don't know if this question also, I remember as a medical student asking, do you all get along? Do you guys hang out and stuff like that? I used to think that was an important question, but I think another way to shift your perspective is ask, are people willing to kind of cover each other? How easy is it to switch vacation? How easy is it to switch calls? I think that becomes a lot more important than actually if people are hanging out, because there has to be, this willingness to help each other. And I think that's more important than like how social a residency is, because eventually social groups will blossom and you'll find your own social niche, whether it's through an annual meeting or like a state society meeting or annual club or any sort of interest group.
Could not agree more with that. I mean, I remember going through interviews and being like, oh, what do you guys do for fun? And thinking that was important. But right now, I mean, second year, I'm so busy. I hardly see anybody outside of work, you know, let alone my co-residents. And third year, you're also busy. But what is most important is, do you guys get along at work? And like you said, the call switching and, you know, how you cover each other is so, so important.
Another dynamic of this is, depending on how competitive of a residency you're at, it might feel like a little bit of a sibling rivalry. At least that was sort of my experience. So I'll just plug again the residence and fellow section. Like if you're interested in IR, that's a great place to plug in. And you might be able to make some connections through your national societies where you're not directly competing with people. But you're instead working together. And just to reiterate what someone said earlier, you're getting access to attendings like myself, like we do projects with residents and just hand in hand. So this is a great way to be involved socially, academically, all of the above, and outside of your residency, because that's just a small group.
Excellent. I think we can move on to the next question.
Right. So a couple of questions. So is radiology a good specialty for women who eventually want families? And as a female or underrepresented minority, have you been able to find the mentors you need and feel like you belong in your program?
So I'll answer this one. I am an IR fellow and just had a baby in September. So she's 6 months old now. Thank you. It is diagnostic radiology is probably one of the best specialties to have a family, both for men and women. I don't know how it works at other places, but at least at UVA, we have 8 weeks guaranteed parental leave, so both men and women. So that was really awesome having 8 weeks off. My fellowship supported me. Everybody covered call for me. And when I came back, you know, I was at this, and even playing field with everybody, it's not like I had to play catch up, and I don't need to extend my fellowship at all. That being said, like, you know, having a family is a very personal decision, and your timeline of everything, trying to work it around when you take the core, which is at the end of your R3 year. R1 is probably the easiest because you don't take any call, or you take very limited call. But it's a very easy specialty in general to have a family, and compared to some surgical subspecialties. When it comes to mentorship in women, you know, we have our local radiologist group, and you can find plenty of women mentors through your ACR or SIR groups. There is like SIR Connect, which is a mentorship program. Like I have gotten my female mentors out of there. For instance, Barbara Hamilton is one of my mentors. And we connected, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago now. And so I had never met her before. But there's great ways to get women mentors out there. If anybody has any questions about having kids in residency or fellowship, I'm more than happy to answer those for you. And you can shoot me a personal message or something.
Can I also say there's the pregnancy toolkit on the SIR website, and so that is meant to help address that question. So just the fact that it exists means that yes, you can do this, and it's some resources to prevent people from being skittish about radiation in pregnancy, and show you some of the data and all of that good stuff. So look for the pregnancy toolkit on the SIR website.
Just to follow up, does someone want to talk to or speak to the question that was like, how do you feel? Do you feel like you fit in as a female in your program?
Okay, I write a blog about this, so I'll just say, so if you want to hear more about the attending perspective, it's a few years in. I've been writing about this for 1.5 years, and it's tiredsuperheroine.com. So if anybody has questions, yeah, just reach out on Twitter or check out what I've written there. I talk about, you know, what my career development has been like, fitting in, confidence as a female physician, all of these things. Because I think they're pretty universal, but they definitely, you know, there's a specific aspect of being in a male-dominated field that I address there.
Yeah, and something I think is really helpful in evaluating these kind of things in programs is looking to see if a program has women in leadership at multiple different levels. So I wanted to go to a program where there were a lot of other, women residents, and luckily I did. So I feel like I fit in fine. But it's important to also have attendings, APDs, to have people in leadership at multiple different levels, so that you have kind of a big range of possible mentors, and you know that you're being represented in different areas.
One more question about
my does not have that many females.
Are you there? Am I just not hearing it?
She's breaking up for me too.
Okay. Sorry, Hala, were you saying something?
Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me? My internet keeps cutting out.
Yes, now we can.
Sorry, all I was saying is, I am one of the few, I'm actually right now the only girl resident in my program, but I will say yes, at first I was very scared about not fitting in, but the guys in radiology tend to be a lot nicer, I think. So I do feel like I fit in, even though I am the only female. And thankfully I do have other attendings that are female. So just because you do talk to your techs too, and there's plenty of female techs there too. So you don't really feel as left out as you might think.
I want to add something just to get down to the brass tacks. Radiology, specifically as a specialty in medicine, is probably the most forgiving field in terms of being able to do what you want to do in life outside of radiology, because you're not taking your work home with you. You don't have 100 or thousands of patients that rely on you as their primary care provider. They don't rely on you to be able to make appointments with you. It's very easy, depending on the practice that you're in, but it's very easy to potentially carve out a part of your year to do what you need to do with your life, whether that's have a kid or pick up a guitar or something. Whatever you want to do, it is very much within your capability to kind of build that into your professional life, given the flexibility that radiology has, based on what radiology is, reading scans that aren't for your primary patients.
Awesome, thank you. And someone also asked about how do you deal with radiation during pregnancy with radiology? So does someone want to talk about
I can answer that. Barbara alluded to the SIR pregnancy information, and there's a lot of valuable information on there. If you decide to get pregnant during residency, I would tell your program director and your medical physicist before you tell anybody else, besides your spouse, of course. But you need to be appropriately protected. Get your fetal dosimeter badge. There's a lot of information out there. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can direct them directly to me. But I imagine that the vast majority of this does not apply to a lot of people at this stage in their life. So I don't want to waste the conference time with this, but just reach out to me directly and I can help answer all of those questions for you.
All right, Cameron, you want to do the last question? It's 8:55.
Yeah, let's do one last question here. So we've talked a lot about Twitter and networking. So someone has asked, does anybody here have any opinions on social media accounts? Is it okay to be funny and have a personality, or do I need to stay very professional on Twitter?
I would say just be yourself and don't be offensive. You don't want to offend anybody or say anything hurtful. Just be yourself. I think the people who are most, I guess, successful are just people who are themselves, and when you meet them in person, they're exactly like who they depict themselves to be. And I think that's what's great. You really do get a sense of people's character on Twitter. And if you are kind of mean, actually people can pick up on that, and they, and that's how you are perceived. So I would say be yourself.
Don't be political.
Yeah, just avoid Twitter fights, I guess.
I would say I've been using Twitter only for like more than a year now, and just the trend, or any social media for that matter, as Rob and Nikki already said, don't get into the fight, don't start the political wars or anything. Honestly, if you have personal opinions, I would keep like two separate accounts. One is going to be your personal, no matter what you want to do it, just probably change the name. But if you are in the professional world, social media is Googleable and it's discoverable whatever you do. And believe it or not, I've heard that a lot of program directors, when they go through your applications, they actually search you on social media. And depending on what you say, it could make or break a deal. And I know for a fact, because there was one guy who we really liked, but it was pretty bad. Got into a social media fight with his girlfriend, made it public. And obviously you don't want to work with somebody like that, right? So try to keep the opinions to completely apolitical, professional, and everybody has a right to have their personal opinions, but maybe not just in the professional world. Keep it simple. It's just a very simple formula. I think that's what I follow.
Well, I would also say, and if there's an opinion that you think is meaningful that would add to conversation, for sure, tweet it out. If you stand for something and it's something that's meaningful to you, say that. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody or it's not offensive. Yeah.
Twitter is definitely
say
how I got some job interviews too. It's like out in IR and diagnostic, it's like incredibly powerful how many people tweet out different cases and stuff, and you can make a lot. I have like 1,000 Twitter people, and I don't even know who most of these people are, but I definitely got job interviews through that, and people reached out. So you can be very good in your specialty, and then you can follow a lot of people that are not in your specialty. There's some guy that's an ophthalmologist who's freaking hysterical, Dr. Shadowgazer or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff on Twitter that you can get into also.
Glaucomuffin.
Also, it's a good way to just like remember who you met. Like I know when you're at meetings and you meet somebody, sometimes I forget your name, but I'll always remember a face. I was like, oh, it's Jessie Chan.
I would say like my rule of thumb for social media is if it's a picture that I don't want my dad seeing or my PD seeing, or an opinion that I don't want my PD seeing, I just don't do it. So if you don't care, if it's something that you don't care that people can find
All right. I think with that, we can probably end. Thank you to everyone who came.
Just one last thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I know, I'm not sure if all of you know, but recently there has been a specialty power fight on Twitter, especially between IRs and vascular surgeons, with me being on the receiving end lately with posting some of the cases, being bashed by vascular surgeons with, I mean, it's kind of a publicity. I got like 40,000 impressions on just one Twitter post. But honestly, if you are in that arena, do not tend to reply. Let the attendings sort it out themselves. Or if you are an attending, obviously take the high road. It's gonna pay back someday later. And you may avoid getting haunted by some of the ghosts on Twitter, like for example, Ghost of Daughter. I mean, even I got called out by even a Ghost of Daughter. I don't know who that person is, but even I got called out by that person too. So bottom line, keep it professional.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming, mentors, mentees. I hope this was useful. And
nice to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. We should totally
you as well
sometime. because we didn't get to a lot of questions. So thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks again, everybody, for coming. We'll try to schedule another one because we have a lot of questions left to go. And just to reiterate, most of the mentors on here are on Twitter, so feel free to reach out to anyone at any point.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Good.
Be safe.
All right. Someone is asking me, did she leave? Dana? I don't know. We're going to have to do it on Twitter. How did you find out about this one?
Can we email the list of people that signed up for this meeting to remind them about the next one?
Yeah, when
So,
should
like,
we do the next one? That's the real question.
That is a good question.
This is really good.
Well,
All right.
we still have a ton of questions in the Google form.
Really?
Yeah, we like double